Okay, well, it's 7:05. We should start the meeting, I believe.
Okay, let's go.
Good evening. My name is Lois Spence, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 7:05 p.m. This is the Inland Wetland Commission meeting for the town of Monroe on September, what is today's date? September 10th. September 10th?
You're cutting out, Lois. Today is the 9th.
All right. Is that any better? Am I cutting out less now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see. It is September 9th, and the time is 7:06. I'll take a roll call of the commission and staff present for tonight's remote meeting. Please answer here or present, starting with myself, Lois Spence, Vice Chair. Let me see here. Jim Stewart, Treasurer.
I'm here.
Clark Gingras.
Here.
Ross Mastroraco. BJ Hall.
Here.
Okay, Denise Halstead, our inland wetland agent.
Here.
Donna Szynski, our office manager.
Here.
And Sarah Stroud, our recording secretary.
Here.
Before we start, I'll read our mission statement and how the meeting will proceed. The objective and purpose of the Inland Wetland Commission is to provide for the overall protection and preservation of the inland wetlands, water, and watercourses within the town of Monroe. In the normal course of our meetings, we will hear public hearings and other applications. The protocol for public hearings is to have an applicant make a presentation to the commission, during which and after which the commission will be asking the applicant questions. Due to the remote meeting status, I'd like to ask applicants to keep their presentations as concise as possible. The commission will then review town staff and other independent comments. Meeting will then be open for public comment. I will ask that all comments be made to the chair or commission. After any and all comments pro, in opposition to, or of a general nature are made, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. Again, due to remote meeting status, please keep comments or questions direct, and a time limit of 3 minutes may be imposed. It is not necessary that the applicant respond, but generally it's in their best interest to do so. There will be no further opportunity for new questions unless new material is entered in as evidence or testimony during their response. Please keep all comments, pro and con, specific to inland wetland related matters. Other applications that do not involve public hearing will follow a similar format, with the exception that there will be no public comment allowed. The meeting follows our published agenda unless otherwise amended. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there is not.
Okay. Okay, then we start with general public participation. Is there anybody that would like to speak concerning a subject of general interest, not having anything to do with our public hearings on the agenda tonight? Waiting with the caller situation, it's an interesting, okay, hearing none. We will start with subdivision regulated activities, subdivision report and recommendations to P&Z. There are none. Regular meetings, no public input, there are none. Public hearing, are we putting off 64 Cambridge to the end like we did last time?
If we could just defer it, yes. There's not that much, but hopefully we can defer it until Keith gets here.
Okay. All right, so we will put 64 Cambridge and 4 Independence to the end of the agenda. Next would be IWC 2020-04, 556 Pepper Street, proposed gravel parking area for commercial vehicles. Is there anyone here for, oh, I see Mr. Rios is here.
Good evening, committee.
Hi. How did you make out?
We did not receive any new information that was requested from the last meeting, Mr. Rios.
I think that's correct. And I'm working on
to provide you all of those information. I mean, they're more drawings, and yeah, trying to get all of the paperwork from the comments.
Okay,
Kind of need to ask a little bit more time.
no problem. I believe we have plenty of time, do we not, Donna?
I understand the next meeting is on the 22nd,
Sounds right.
so that's
I can't
plenty of
hear
time for
you,
me.
Lois,
That plenty of time for me to.
and I can't hear you, Mr. Rios, either.
He said that he was having, needs more time to put together his paperwork and to submit said things, and that he understands that the next meeting is the 22nd and
The 23rd, just so you know.
23rd. Thank you. So, Mr. Rios, do you think you'll have everything submitted before that meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Things would need to be submitted. Please contact our staff at the office, because things need to be in the office before the actual meeting so that they can process them and get copies to our commissioners. And so please contact the staff sometime soon so that we can have everything running smoothly.
It would need to be in, for the next meeting, it would need to get to us by next Wednesday, the 16th.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Then we will continue this hearing until next meeting, the 23rd. Thank you, Mr. Rios.
One thing that I need to clarify, please.
Sure.
On the last meeting with the zoning, there were like they postposed another hearing because they need the inland wetland answer about my application in order for them to make a decision. And on our last meeting, Inland Wetland Commission need zoning decision in order to it was like a both from both ends need answers in order to provide a to keep going with the application, basically.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. They need an answer from us and we need an answer from them.
Basically.
Did you get information from them on whether or not they were going to ask you to pave your parking lot?
Right, that's one of the absolutely big question. They don't know. I mean, they're first they said in order to compliance with the regulation, to park the equipment, I need a hard surface. So they asked for an asphalt driveway. I told them I'm exhausted pretty much all of my saving in order to in all of this application or processing of this application, and I may not gonna be able to pay because that's a lot expensive for me, and I need to ask if is there other way, because I remember last meeting Mrs. Halstead said that in that when I'm always kind of prefer gravel driveway, and now I'm in this situation with kind of running out of money to tell the truth, and then I have and in order to be compliant with the zoning, I have to pave my driveway that is huge.
So we have come to an impasse. I'm not quite sure how to deal with that. because we don't mind the gravel driveway. I don't think we have a preference one way or the other, but we don't have the same kind of zoning. Zoning has the final say on that. So if they tell you you don't need to pave it, but we would need to know that they said that, then we can go ahead with the application. So we can go ahead with the application anyway, but the issue is that if they say that you need to pave it, it's going to change everything, and you'll need to come back to us and with an amended permit, and that's more money and more time for everybody. So if you can get an answer from them as to whether or not they're going to require you to pave it, money notwithstanding, I mean, that's not in our purview at all. But I think we need to hear from them and from you whether or not that's going to be required.
Okay, understand. Those are, yeah, one of the reasons that I need a little more time, because we're working with the engineer to come up with some sort of plan with the drawings and with the new way to deal with the situation. I don't know, maybe we come up with I don't know if they also require another material can be also concrete instead of asphalt.
But you have options, and you do have time. So you can
Okay.
work with your engineer, you can work with planning and zoning. Feel free to contact them at their office. And they are very amenable to working together and to come to a mutual understanding. Not that the office can make any decisions, but they can give you options from which you can choose, and we can take it from there. Okay, so until
That's
then,
wonderful.
we'll continue to the next meeting, and we'll see you then.
Good evening, Mrs. Pence. Committee,
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you. Okay. Just hearing from Ross. Donna, can you send him the ID?
Yes. I just need to make one announcement, and it's that this go-to meeting is being conducted in accordance with the governor's executive orders and has been posted as such, just for the record, just so that we have that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will try and talk to Ross. To Keith, is that what you said, Keith?
No, Ross, I haven't heard from Keith.
Okay, Ross needs it?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Okay, next. Next, we have NOV discussions, of which we have none, and no remediation submissions. Application hearing determinations, we have none. Other, we have none. Deliberations, we have none. No completed hearing, no bond releases, reduction reports, no time extension. Which brings us to agent approval. Is there anything that's not listed on the agenda, Denise?
Sorry, trying to get my mic on. Nope, no new agent approvals have come in since last meeting.
Okay.
We do have a new IPU.
Right, that's right. Permitted uses as of right, IPU 2020-17, 69 Jockey Hollow Road, emergency septic repair. Let me see.
And then if you look under the DPW one.
Right, I see that under our general IPU 2018-01, Department of Public Works said we're going to replace the drainage crossover on 51/41 Scenic Hill Road. The crossover is the Flint Ridge Road side of the property. Work needs to be done work is to be done under the existing permit.
Mhm.
Okay. Let me see. That, I believe. Do we do minutes and everything too, Donna?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do those too.
Okay. Did anybody else read the minutes? If not, I did not have a chance. I saw some things that I wanted to go through the old meeting recording and check out. I did not have a chance to do that. So in light of that, I would like to table that for the next meeting. Anybody?
Okay.
Everybody agree with that?
Sure, that's fine.
Thank you.
Problem.
That brings us back to 64 Cambridge for
You know, go ahead and eat the frog. We're gonna have to do it.
Okay. This will be IWC 2020-03R. 64 Cambridge for independent site development and restoration. This is a continuation from the last few meetings. I believe that many of our commissioners did walk the site, and we got a chance to see what it was all about. And I was wondering if Mr. Soley had any more comments to make, or if there were any other, well, we'll start with Mr. Soley.
Thank you, Commissioner. For the record, my name is Kevin Soley. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Soley Engineering. Office is located at 501 Main Street right here in Monroe. So I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to come to the site walk. We had 2 very successful site walks, and we were actually able to even extend the invitation for the site walk last night to the Planning and Zoning Commission as well. We have started our planning and zoning process. We opened our first public hearing last Tuesday, and we'll be continuing that public hearing process with them in October. My hope for tonight was to really solicit feedback from the commission based on our walk. We're happy to answer any additional questions that the commission may have. I also wanted to just give the commission some updates based on some of the discussion held at the last meeting. We have engaged a hydrogeologist who is working on an analysis of the property and a report in response to the commission comments and some of the recommendations that came through the Southwest Conservation District recommendations. They need some time to prepare that analysis. Right now we're looking to have that completed and submitted to the commission prior to their meeting on October 14th. So we look forward to processing that and presenting that to the commission for their enjoyment and then consideration. We have also been compiling a significant amount of information. We provided to the Land Use Department staff last Thursday a pretty robust list of, do we want to say for the record, Chairman Romano has joined the hearing?
I'm here.
Lois, you're muted.
Yes, Chairman Romano has joined the meeting as of 7:23. Okay. Floor's all yours,
Thank
Kevin.
you. Yep. So we have been, excuse me. Last Thursday, we submitted to land use staff some documentation on some manifests for material that has been imported to the property, both during the current ownership and also prior to that ownership. And we're going to be providing to the commission a comprehensive package, which includes manifests of all large import projects which have come to the property. We've also engaged WSP and Derek Jones, who's a licensed environmental professional who has actually conducted and is finishing up his report, where he went out and took samples of various material piles on the property, in addition to groundwater or surface water towards the northern end of the site, run that through chemical analysis, and all of those results have come back clean, well within tolerances. So we're going to be, they're finishing up their report. We're going to be submitting that report, which includes chemical analysis of, again, material on the property and the surface water towards the northern end. and that all came back clean. We're also going to be providing to the commission a sample certificate of conformance, which has been maintained through the operation since the new owner took place, which basically goes along with every load of material that comes to the property. The operator who's bringing that material has to provide a certificate of conformity that that material does meet the definition of clean fill. We also have some documentation to show how loads that have come to the property have been rejected and removed if there was any observation of any deleterious materials which would not meet those definitions and would not qualify as material that would want to be imported to the property. So we're going to be, just so everyone's aware, this is the size of that submission and that paperwork. So we were going to submit one paper copy and then digital copies for the commission to consider and for staff to consider. We were trying to get it in before this meeting, but we're still compiling some of that stuff, and WSP needed to make some complete their report. So we're also actively excited to hear any additional comments or feedback that came from the site walk, as we are preparing and finalizing our formal response to comments to address revisions to the plans and reports to address Denise's comments, Scott Schatzline's comments as the town engineer, and also responses to the intervener and his consultants, the comments that they've issued as well. So all of that will be coming in full written form over the next coming weeks, and we're excited to review all that with the commission. But tonight, I think we'd like to hear any other feedback or thoughts from the site walk, and then we assume you may also open it up to Attorney Green and his consultants as well to offer any feedback from their view of the site walk.
Okay. Keith, would you like to take over, or do you want me to continue?
Someone keeps muting me. I don't know how, but yeah, I'll take over. Just bring me up to speed of what we accomplished so far.
You came in at just the beginning of 64 Cambridge. Everything else was
All the business is taken care of?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so now the first thing we need to do is I think we have to make a motion and vote to accept the report. The Southwest District report. Where is it?
Accept the report.
I'm sorry, the Southwest Conservation District. You have to accept it into the record. I don't think we've done that yet.
Okay, then if we need to do that, if this is by motion, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, then I will make a motion that we accept the report from the Southwest Conservation District in its entirety to our record for this application.
Okay, and second, Commissioner Gates, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
Who was the second, please?
Mark. Commissioner Gingras.
Thank you.
And now this is the time that if any commissioners have any comments on the walk to the presenters. Any commissioner will go, I'll just go through. I'll start with Commissioner Stewart.
I don't have any questions on the walk. I do have some other issues. If now is the time, you let me know. If you want me to wait till later, I will.
Let's go through. What we'll do is we'll go through any comments, anything they saw. Then we'll come back. Do you want to wait until after we let the interveners? I mean, is it
whatever works for you.
All right, let's just go through and make sure everybody's have anything about the walk, because it's fresh in our minds, and I don't want to let that expire too much. Commissioner Hall.
I found the walk to be very helpful, getting a visual perspective on everything that was in the application as well as the Southwest document. So I think that it accomplished its purpose for me and I'm ready to proceed with further questions at the right time.
All set? Commissioner Gingrich? Anything?
No, I'm all set. It was very informational. Helped us out with all the application process. So I'm ready for the next steps.
Okay. Commissioner Spence?
I pretty much echo the same thing. I
Okay.
appreciate the opportunity to walk it.
And we're missing Commissioner Massaraco. Is he here?
He was trying to get on. I don't know if he was, it doesn't appear that he was actually able to do it.
I don't see him. Okay. So then, nothing from the commissioners. Next, we're going to do any public comments on the walk. Anybody that was there that isn't on the wetlands commissioner? How are we going to handle that? Because everybody's muted. You want to unmute everybody, Donna? We'll just see if anybody chimes in.
I did unmute all.
I still see them all. That was the callers. What if, there's one unmuted caller, but everybody else who has a name is still muted.
I understand. They obviously don't want to speak. As far as I can tell, I'm not prohibiting anyone from.
Okay, well, I'll just ask, is anybody from the public that was at the walk has any comments about what they saw? Questions for the presenter from what they saw? Just speak up.
Hi, this is Commissioner Ambrosi from Planning and Zoning. I just want to let you know that I don't think a lot of people get on the meeting because the ID that they have on the website is different than what's on the agenda. So you should let them know that they have to go to the agenda to get the ID.
That's a good.
Unfortunately, there isn't a lot that I can do about that right now, Leon. It's
well,
the meeting ID.
Well, Donna, you should give them the right ID number so they can get on. The ID that's posted, you got to go to the agenda and give them the ID number, and I think that the chairman should be able to do that.
Well, we
have
know
to go
that
to the agenda, not what's posted.
I understand that. They can get onto the thing, and if they look, the meeting ID is on the under people. If they click on people, it'll tell you what the meeting ID is. And I've held it up a number of times also, which is the 123-562-621, which is also the numbers on the link. So where it says the go-to meeting.
If they go to, Donna, if they go to the agenda, that number's there, and they can punch the access code and get right onto the meeting. Because I had a long time to get on the meeting myself because
the access code is 123-562-621, which is up on my screen right now.
Okay. But the thing is if they go to the agenda, they can get right on by just clicking the website.
That's true. They can.
Right. So I wanted them to explain to them that that's where they have to go.
Oh, well, yes, they can go onto monroect.org under inland wetlands and the meeting agenda for September 9th. And if the link is right on the agenda, they can click on it.
I'm just concerned that I see everybody muted except for myself, Donna, Clark, Lois, and caller number 3. So if there's somebody out there that wants to make a comment or a question, if they're speaking, how do we hear them?
I mean,
if I may, I've seen other commissions use the chat feature to, if anyone
They are
wanted
not
to
allowed-
offer a comment. No, just to simply raise their hand to say that they wanted to provide a comment, not to provide any written comments. Alternatively, also, I think Donna could probably just unmute everybody and see if anyone had anything to say.
I have unmuted them, but
Donna, this is Karen
Yes.
Burnett. Do you hear me?
yes, I do.
I just for everyone edification, anyone on the who is called in or looking in via Zoom, you have to press your own unmute button. That's what I did. You can unmute, and you didn't unmute it at my end. I just pushed my unmute myself. I don't really
Okay.
have anything to say. I'd like to speak later, but I don't have anything to say about the walk.
Okay,
Okay.
then we have, so I guess
I
then no
am
one
sending
wants to speak about the
unmute
walk.
request.
All right, so I guess we're done with that part of this meeting. I
Okay.
just want to, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
No one has anything to say. All right, okay. So the next thing we have to do, you want to do something about those letters and
It's normally when I read the exhibits, but I will be happy to read the public comments into the record now, if you'd like.
let's do, Joel, are you ready to present your whatever, do your presentation?
Thank you,
Very
Mr. Chairman. Joel, for the record, Joel Green, representing the intervener, Peter Metropolis trustee. Mr. Chairman, it seems to me that Mr. Soley made a number of comments this evening earlier, including that apparently the fill manifest or some sort of summary was submitted to land use staff. I'm not certain why that wasn't submitted to the commission yet and to the interveners. I note that there's been reference to the fact that the applicant is compiling, I guess, other information and is going to prepare a formal written response in advance of the next meeting. I note that the applicant has indicated that WSP has apparently done some analysis of the water, done some analysis of perhaps some soil, that those test results are still being compiled and have not been submitted yet to staff or the commission. As the commission is aware, we submitted at the request of the applicant, my client had submitted a request for information. We believe that the application was incomplete and or that additional information is required. We submitted a letter from Alta Environmental, from REMA Ecological, that itemized a number of items of information that we were requesting. Mr. Soley indicated that that is being compiled by the applicant. So it seems to me that it probably makes sense for the intervener to respond to what I will call a more complete presentation, which includes all of this material that's apparently about to be submitted and hopefully will be submitted in advance of the next session of the commission. And depending on the nature and extent of that information, I think that it would probably be prudent for the intervener to then present after we've had an opportunity to see really what the application entails. So I suppose I would defer till after the information we requested, the WSP information, the manifests, and whatever other information the applicant submits, and we have a fully integrated, complete application, and that we would then be in a position to respond to that. I would urge the commission, however, this evening to consider the recommendations by Southwest, including that the commission obtain soil samples and water quality sampling independently, which is within the jurisdiction of the commission, so that ultimately we're in a position where we are all addressing a full body and a complete body of information and not reacting to an application that really needs to be sort of filled out and more robust. So that's a long-winded way of saying that the interveners would propose to submit at the next session of the commission or after the information is all into the record.
All right, thank you. Okay, so then, Donna, you could read in those exhibits.
Certainly.
For the record, I would just like to note that Ross Mastroianni joined us at 7:40.
Thank you. So this is exhibit number 15. It was received September 1st, and it's addressed to the Town of Monroe, Inland Wetlands Commission, and Planning and Zoning Commission. Dear Commission members, I am submitting this letter to express my professional opinion about the conditions which I believe should be imposed on this project to ensure an environmentally sound outcome. As you are aware, the environmental debacle currently existing at the site was brought about through the illegal operation of a mine. The mine was never permitted, annual reports were never filed, wetland regulations were ignored, and unmitigated blasting shook foundations throughout the area. The owner-operators ignored all town, state, and federal mining regulations. If they had followed the regulations, the fill required to restore the site would already be stockpiled on the site awaiting restoration. Instead, they stripped every usable bit of soil, subsoil, and rock they could sell to leave the town with a moonscape. While it is commendable that the owners and former owners want to try to rectify the mess that they have created, it should be done in a responsible manner and one that will not involve the town in a future contaminated landfill restoration. The following are recommendations that should be followed unless you all wish to be remembered as the commission members that allowed a toxic waste dump to be operated in Monroe to the detriment of the populace. The first bullet point is the town should hire an independent licensed environmental professional to be paid for by the owner to comment on and amend the fill management plan for the site. The LEP should also oversee the filling operations and conduct independent spot sampling of material being brought on the site. The LEP should submit an annual report on conditions as well as report any violations of conditions immediately to the town zoning enforcement officer and or the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. The second point is the current plan of sampling the fill material at a rate of 1 per 3,000 yards is inadequate and misguided. A sample should be obtained from every source material being brought in prior to accepting the material. Sampling should then be conducted at a rate of 1 per 500 cubic yards, which is the industry standard. Truckers should have paperwork showing the source of the material in their trucks to be submitted to the site operations manager. The next bullet point is material being brought to the site should meet at a minimum the industrial commercial direct exposure criteria and most critically the GA groundwater classification pollutant mobility criteria in the regulations of the Connecticut State Agency's remediation standard regulations. The pollutant mobility criteria were specifically developed to protect the groundwater quality of the state. People in this area rely on groundwater for their potable use. Monitor wells should be installed at locations chosen by the LEP and should be sampled on a quarterly basis. The importation of 1,300,000 yards of material would involve some 50,000 truckloads, with the trucks pounding the pavement to rubble and spewing greenhouse gases in the form of diesel emissions. I trust that you've considered the impact on the town of these facts. There is no single source in the state of Connecticut to provide this volume of fill. Left on their own recognizance, the owners will accept anything to fill the enormous hole they have created, and every trucker with something to dispose of will know that they can unload their contaminated material in Monroe. Please take the appropriate measures to prevent this from happening and create a future nightmare for the citizens of this town. Respectfully submitted by Robert DeMonica, licensed environmental professional, certified professional geologist, 391 Sand Hill Road, Monroe, Connecticut. That was Exhibit 15. Exhibit 16 was received yesterday via email, and it says, "Dear members of Monroe Inland Wetland Commission, I was pleased to be able to walk the property at 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive today. After reading the report from the Southwest Conservation District, I urge the Inland Wetlands Commission to follow through on the recommendations included in the report's executive summary. I serve as the chair of the Monroe Conservation and Water Resources Commission. On several occasions, the commission has voiced concern over the quarry on Cambridge Drive. Because summer schedules have precluded a regular meeting of the commission, I submit my request as a Monroe resident and a Conservation Commission member, deeply concerned about Monroe's drinking water, watershed land, and extremely supportive of protecting valuable open space. Please let me know if you have any questions. Karen Bernaska, 99 Bagburn Road." This exhibit number 17 was received via email this afternoon. It says, "Inland Wetland Commissioners, I urge you to support restoring 64 Cambridge for Independence to the highest environmental standard possible and support the SWCD independent report. I went on the walk through on Saturday, August 29th. It is very disturbing to see the condition of the property and think that it was allowed to happen and go on for so long. Please act to restore the property for the sake of water quality and the wildlife it should and could still support. We lose too much land to development every year and need to demand environmentally responsible development. Respectfully, Barbara Thomas, 3 Wheeler Road." And that's it. I can't hear you, Keith. Nope, still can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Okay. You're not muted. I couldn't even read it.
He said he's going to sign back in.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, who did you drop off that information to about the soil?
So I can, and just to kind of address Attorney Green's comments before. So we emailed Rick Schultz, Will Agresta, I think Denise, you may have been copied on that too, a link to download a number of the manifests. And we were simply asking the question because it's a voluminous amount of information. So we wanted to kind of figure out how they want us to formally submit the information to both Wetlands and Planning and Zoning. In the absence of a response, we're just going to formally submit it to both commissions.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I apologize, Kevin. Coming back
okay.
after, I saw the links, but that's the extent of it. I saw all the files.
Okay.
No worries. No worries at all. Hey, Keith's back.
No, I think I have another thing under here that was muted. But anyways, okay. Let me just go back to, because Ross joined us. I want to give him an opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments about the sidewalk. Ross?
I have no.
Nothing. Okay. So the only order of business we have left, I think, is this draft motion.
Well, I would just like to I believe Commissioner Stewart had mentioned before that he may have some other questions. We're obviously trying to solicit as much feedback from everybody. Frankly, even Attorney Green and his consultants, if they had thoughts or comments from the walk, we'd like to hear that now so we can incorporate any potential revisions to our plans in our next submission. We really are trying to avoid the continued and unnecessarily delay in processing these applications. So we would really like to hear any other questions or comments from the commission that may impact our revised information. And any information that came out of the site walk, we'd like to hear all of it. We are actively here to fix an issue and to restore this site. We actually, I appreciate a number of the letters that were submitted because they kind of share the sentiments. We're trying to do this in the most environmentally sensitive way possible, and we're trying to make sure that what we're doing addresses all of those concerns, restores the site, restores the watershed, and does so in a meaningfully and environmentally sensitive way. So any additional feedback or comments or questions that will possibly allow us to make our application even better, we'd like to hear that now. If any commissioners have any.
I'd be happy to respond on that. And I note that I shared the commission's reaction where I don't really have a lot to say. I appreciate the opportunity for the site visit after, the lengthy process of arranging it. But I think that I understand that the commission really largely doesn't have any comment at this moment pending this additional information. But candidly, my reaction to the site walk was that I'm shocked at the magnitude of the excavation on the site. I'm shocked by the changes to the appearance of the site. And that's particularly shocking as I've spent some time over the past month. If you look at Google Earth or you look at Bing Maps and you look at the historic appearance of the site from these satellite images of the site, it is shocking. The changes in the location of apparent ponds on the site, changes in the contour of the site, changes in where the location of these water bodies were on the site. And most evident to me walking the site was that there's been a tremendous amount of filling and grading already performed on this site. And that sort of ties into the great curiosity I have in seeing these manifests. And frankly, the applicant has made reference to a filing cabinet full of manifests, and we are, as interveners, eager to see the raw data, and we hope that there's some input ultimately as to the nature and extent of the disclosure. I've been impressed that repeatedly the applicant has made reference to this robust review process in reviewing the loads of fill that arrive at the site. It's evident to us that it may not be as comprehensive and robust, and I think that was noted by Southwest as well, as robust as it should be. But we're curious as to the actual information that the applicant has as to the fill that has entered the site versus the overall volume of apparent filling on the site. And I'm sure that the commission shares my curiosity and my concern. But until we have, all of this information that the applicant is apparently queuing up, we really, we just have these questions. And once again, we've submitted a long list of questions, and we look forward to those responses. So that's my only response on the segment.
Great. Thank you, Attorney Green. Let's go back then. Let's go back to Commissioner Stewart, and let's give him the floor to discuss his what he wanted to discuss.
Thank you. Okay, a question for, I guess Kevin would be the right person to ask. Can you go through the types of material you're going to be accepting, how it comes into the site, how you're going to stockpile and process it, and then how it gets placed in the site?
Sure. So actually, Donna, if you could make me a presenter, I can pull up our phased SEC plans and talk through that exact process.
Yeah, I don't need to see the drawings of where the fill is going, because I think we covered that. I'm more interested in how it actually, the actual physically what you're going to do. Are you going to take the material from the trucks, stockpile it, test it, or are you just going to back up the first 100 trucks, dump them in a pile, and test the one after that? Are you going to take the material, you're going to crush it, screen it, mix it, use it that way? You follow me?
Sure. So I'll run through the process and the procedure for how each load of material is received. So every time a truck comes on, it gets weighed on the scale. It gets visually inspected by the operator, make sure that what's in there is consistent with what the driver is representing, and that driver has to provide a certificate that material meets the definition of clean fill. That material is then brought into the site. It is dumped. It is inspected again, and that material is essentially kind of stockpiled for the QA/QC additional testing that takes place in accordance with the material acceptance protocol. We are also revising that protocol to include some additional information that any and all material that comes to the site in accordance with DEP requirements has to be tested at a rate of 1 test for every 250 cubic yards prior to departure from that site. So that's actually something that's also getting incorporated in, because our protocol, not only does it specify the testing that has to take place before the material even gets to the property, but also the additional QA/QC testing that we're providing. And our protocol really only talked about the QA/QC component, so we're incorporating that as well, that the material has to be tested at that frequency prior to even coming on the site, and that documentation has to come with it as well. So the material would then be stockpiled. We would take our random samples for QA/QC. It would then be processed to be placed into the hole as part of the filling operation. That's the general gist of it. We've identified locations on our plans in terms of the bins that would be set up to receive material, to sort material, how the processing of that material would take place, and kind of where that activity would evolve over the life of the filling operation, as we've identified in the multiple phases.
So specifically, when you say the material be processed, are you separating the material by what it is? Do you then crush it and put it back together again, or are you going to be filling it separately? You follow me?
So yeah, I do. So material would come in. It would be processed and then kind of aggregated to be put into the filling operation. So if there's a building demolition that material meets the definition of clean fill and wants to be placed as fill material, that the larger pieces that would need to be processed to get into manageable sizes, they can actually be put into the hole as fill. That's how that process would take place.
So the processing is just to make it so it's material you can fill.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really it's processing so it can be placed into the hole in compacted lifts in accordance with standard construction methodologies.
Okay, so is there a maximum size of particles you're looking for? Are you crushing down to a 1 foot or?
So it depends on the depth of the fill. With any construction project, you can sometimes have larger aggregate pieces in deeper fill sections. So that's somewhat going to be dictated by a geotechnical engineer and the site engineer during the operations. But generally, you could have material, 6-inch minus for the shallower fills and up to 18-inch minus or even 2 foot minus for some of the deeper fills for the deepest part. However, I do want to say that we have talked about before, we would only be proposing the use of on-site native materials for the deepest parts of the fill until we're up and out of that deepest section. And then the balance of that material that would come into the site would be used for the upper fills.
Now, I understand your testing. I'm aware that it's certain contaminants you can mix additional material and dilute the contaminant and make the problem go away, and then resample. Is that something that you're expecting to be doing?
We would not generally. So generally, I think something that you're referring to is, oftentimes if a building has paint on it, you could aggregate a sample to ensure that it doesn't have any exceedances from a volume standpoint. We are not accepting any material that would trigger an exceedance prior to coming to the site. So we are not looking to incorporate material that wouldn't meet that qualification and then mix it with other stuff. It has to meet that criteria before it even comes to the property.
But I understand, but you would be stockpiling it. So there's a chance at some point you would get a test that was hot, and you potentially got 3,000 yards of material, and you have one hot sample. What would be the procedure at that point? Would you remix the pile and retest? Would you add material, or would you then take that material, those 3,000 yards, and truck them off the site?
The person who brought the material, who provided that certification, would be responsible to come back and take that material off the property. Okay,
so materials from each vendor are kept separately for testing until the testing is received.
Yes. That's why we have a series of bin for the collection and stockpiling of material.
Okay, you also had a rather large pile of broken up asphalt. I'm assuming that's going to be asphalt is clean fill if it's in a certain situation. Is that asphalt going to be wholesalely in one mass backfilled?
No, that wouldn't be used in one mass backfill or one concentrated area. Again, from a pollutant mobility standpoint, we'd have to make sure that size of that material was consistent so that it didn't create any potential issues from an environmental standpoint. Primarily, that's better used for road base, below roads and things like that, below paved surfaces. We wouldn't be looking to just backfill, a huge area with asphalt or anything like that.
So you wouldn't be taking in asphalt chunks just for fill.
No.
Would you propose to be processing? And you said you wouldn't. But I'm going to ask again because you have a very large pile of processed aggregate, concrete and asphalt ground up. That's not something you'd be doing for other than to create material to fill the site.
That's correct. At this point, this application is strictly the imported material for processing and placing as part of that fill operation.
Okay. I'm assuming this is that people pay you to take their fill?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
right, thank you, Commissioner Stewart. Is there anybody else, any other commissioners that have any other questions of the applicant at this time?
I do.
That,
Mr. Sola, you mentioned bins that you were going to put the material into that you are receiving. Are those bins located on the plans?
Yes, they are. Those bins are located on the SEC plans, and they kind of move throughout the site from phases 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. So how many truckloads can each bin accommodate?
That's a good question. It'd be depend on the size of the pile in the bin. I could get that. I don't have that number available right now, but I could certainly
Just a
provide that.
ballpark. I'm just curious as to what the size of these things are.
It could probably, I hate throwing numbers out without doing math. I'm an engineer. So let's see. Let me do some quick math. Probably about 1,200 yards, 1,000 to 1,200 yards per bin. We have 50 by 40 bins placed and located on the site plans.
Okay. Thank you. Now, in your presentation earlier, I heard it all. I listened to it all. I didn't necessarily absorb it all. Did you say that there was a hydrogeologist that has been hired to, and is he going to issue a report, he or she, or is there going to be just recommendations? Can you tell me what we can expect from him or her?
Sure. So that scope of work includes evaluating wells in the area, evaluating groundwater wells which have been on the property to determine and establish groundwater flows. It's going to include an analysis of those wells on the site and historical readings of wells throughout the property that are available. And it will include a report that would be presented to this commission in response to the Southwest Conservation District's comments and the concerns of the commission. I will say that we were actually able to locate some wells that have been on the property since 2002. So I think if it's during the site walk, you may remember when you enter the property and you go past the scale house and past the garage, there's a sedimentation basin on the left-hand side of the site. There are actually wells just past the woods that have been there since 2002. The groundwater elevation of those wells is the same as it was 18 years ago. So that just, shows that this did not have a significant impact of groundwater elevations or things like that. Obviously, the hydrogeologist will be able to provide a much more robust report on that. But we are, there will be a report that'll be submitted to the commission and presented.
You mentioned plural wells. You told us the location of one. How many others are there?
Well, it's actually, there's a non-potable well. It's not a potable well. It's a non-potable well behind that shack near that basin. And then there's 2 other wells which are to the east of that in the wetland area, which have been there since 2002. So that's all down gradient from the excavation activity that took place and the proposed fill activity as well.
Is there any that are directly adjacent or very close to the excavation, the major excavation, the hole?
There's none. I mean, those are pretty close in terms of proximity, but there aren't any immediately adjacent to or within the limits of work. I think those are, in context, those are the closest, they're immediately outside the limit of disturbance.
I look forward to hearing the report or getting the report. And that's it for my questions.
Okay. Any other commissioners? All right.
Hey, Keith, this is BJ. I do have a question or comment here.
Go for it.
Okay. Kind of following on to what Kevin and Lois were discussing there about the wells, going forward, I think it'll be important to have the monitoring of these and other sources throughout. And I hope to see in a future version of the application the plan for monitoring and checking. The hydrogeologist, it's good to have an analysis, but I'd like to see or understand more how they might play in the long term. As I understand, this is a 10-year project. So 5 years out, what will be happening that will give us confidence that everything is being done as planned?
Yeah, we'll certainly incorporate that and those kind of procedures that we would propose them for the commission's consideration.
Good.
Okay. We have. So that's it for comments from the commissioners? I believe so. All right, we have a draft motion that came to me. That has anybody seen this?
Yeah. Well, we need to. I did see it. I've got it in my hand. My question is, do we still need an independent hydrogeologist since the applicant has already hired one?
That's a very good question, and there's that part of it in the draft, but there's also some other parts that that person wouldn't be able to handle, I don't think. I guess I'll just read this into the record for right now. And it's based on an analysis of part of it has to do with the report we got from the Southwest Conservation District and some of their recommendations. And I'll just read it. Do you rather read it in, Donna?
No, I mean, it was one of those things that you guys had made a motion at the last meeting that you wanted to, possibly get a third party. And so I guess this draft was made for you to look at and to either use or not use, depending on how the commission wanted it.
Well, except for that, I don't think everybody's seen it.
Chairman Romano, could I be heard for a second? Chairman Romano, could I be heard for a minute?
Sure. Attorney Finn.
My recollection is at the last hearing, there was some discussion about hiring an independent soil scientist to look at the area that was identified as a possible watercourse by Chris Sullivan of the Southwest Conservation District. I think that was the only motion that I heard at the last meeting. And I think that Mr. Sully communicated perhaps to Donna or perhaps to Denise that we were not going to contest that particular area could be deemed a watercourse. We happen to think it's caused by construction, which is a significant distinction, but we didn't think it was worth really contesting and having to go out and hire an independent soil scientist to opine on that. To the extent that there's a motion pending now that goes beyond what was discussed at the last meeting, I think as a procedural matter, it would only be fair to allow the applicant to look at that and formulate a position on it before it gets voted on by the commission. Otherwise, we're sort of don't have an opportunity to respond substantively in any way.
That would go, later, refer to or defer to Barbara on that comment.
I mean, if the commission wants, it can certainly solicit comments from the applicant or anyone else, but the commission has a right to consider whether it wants to hire any or consider hiring any further independent consultants. That's in the commission's discretion.
I don't
Under
disagree
its
with that.
regulations, that's very clear. It's within the commission's discretion. So if there's a draft motion that staff has prepared, the commission can share it, discuss it, and decide how it wants to proceed.
So I'm thinking then that what I'll do is I'll read it, and then the commission in this meeting right now could discuss it. And then I guess we could also get a response from the applicant and then decide what to do from there. Does that sound?
May I say something?
Hold on. Evan, I don't think this pertains to anything for you at this point. So we'll. Barbara, is that what we should do?
I think that's a fine way to proceed.
Okay. All right. So for, I'll read this. Actually, Donna, why don't you read it? Because you're probably used to doing this than me.
Pursuant to Section 8-10 of the Monroe Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Regulation, as recommended by the Southwest Conservation District Report dated August 2020, the Monroe Inland Wetlands Commission, the IWC, hereby authorizes the Inland Wetlands Agent to solicit preliminary estimates of costs and scheduling from independent hydrologist consultants to perform the following work in association with the Inland Wetland Application number IWC 2020-03R. Number 1, to analyze all data provided by the applicant pertaining to previously performed soil samples and groundwater conditions of the subject property. 2, to perform separate soil samples in areas determined by the independent consultant and to analyze and report on said samples. 3, to select and install new groundwater well locations as part of monitoring network to analyze and report on any, I'm going to mess up this word, leachate leaving the subject property via groundwater flows. 4, to inspect the sediment and erosion control devices on the subject property and report accordingly. And 5, to review the applicant's manifest and report on the data submitted.
All right, so that's the draft motion that staff wrote this week. Let's go through and see what the commissioners think about that. Start with Commissioner Stewart again.
I guess my one question is, what is our timing for all this? Do we have unlimited time for this application?
You don't have unlimited time for the application, but there is extra time. There's an additional 90 days that is from an executive order that applied during the state of emergency. So that time is added to the normal 65 days under the statute that the applicant can consent to. So we do have significantly more time than we have had in the past.
Okay, so we've got plenty of time to do this. I guess I'd like to hear from the applicant and the interveners on what they think about this motion.
Let's just go. Is that all you have to say, Commissioner Stewart?
Yeah.
All right, let me
Yeah.
continue down the line. Commissioner Hall?
Well, it sounds like the draft motion is more of a pricing, availability, scope of work motion here rather than an actual definition of what that person would complete, just from the reading there. But
I believe that's correct. It's like apparently the first step. That is the first step in this process. Is there anything else?
So if we were to go ahead with this motion, then this could lead to further steps. So what?
Additional steps probably, and I think maybe having comment on that after all the commissioner comments, but I think it's also might be a little bit of redundancy on what they're proposing. So we can get to that.
Right, it might be preparation that we don't pull the trigger and actually do the work.
I think that's up to us.
Yeah, okay, that's all I've got.
Commissioner Gingras, any comments about this draft motion?
I think it's just redundant. We're just doing an extra step. But that's all I can say.
Okay, Commissioner Spence.
I'm looking at the list of things that we're going to add. Oh, and one minor, when Donna read it, she said hydrologist, and it's hydrogeologist, just for the record, since it's a.
Thank you.
Not everything on that list is something that's applicable, it seems to me, to a hydrogeologist. Some of those things that we're asking for may be better filled by a soil scientist. And inspecting sedimentation and erosion control, I don't think that falls under a hydrologist or a hydrogeologist jurisdiction. So I'm wondering, do we need to expand the motion to include other experts that we may want to consult so that we have all of the bases covered properly?
Commissioner Spence, you bring up a very good point. Now, I know that we're supposed to solicit these estimates that are, I think the list is going to be provided by Chris Sullivan, potential companies, and they may have, whoever's referred may have all the proper consultants to deal with the list. I'm assuming that, and then again, I'll let Kevin respond to that afterwards because he probably knows more than I do or anybody else here. They may just have like one group may have a spread of all the different specialists that are required to handle this list. So we can find that out, right?
Understood. So then I would like to expand, if we were going to adopt this motion, I would like to expand the wording to say independent hydrogeologist and or other appropriate professionals.
Okay.
To perform the following work. So we're not pigeonholed into hydrogeologists, but that we have the option to ask other experts for their opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Is that it?
I'm sorry. Can you say that again? You wanted the consultants on.
Just insert a few words, independent consultants, such as perhaps hydrogeologists, such as but not limited to hydrogeologists, soil scientists, and other appropriate professionals to perform the following work, ...
Okay, thank you.
And did we want to include anything else on that list? Did we want an opinion on, for instance, if we did get a hydrogeologist, did we want him to opine on the report of the other hydrogeologist? Sometimes there's conflicting concepts. I don't know if that even needs to be in the motion, but,
Well, it says here in number 5 that all, the report on the data submitted.
okay.
So the applicant is going to submit more data. Commissioner, is there any more questions? Okay, Commissioner Massaraco?
That sounds pretty good. I like what Lois had to say there. That's about it.
The applicant, do you want either Kevin or whoever wants to respond or make any comments to this?
Well, I'll respond, and Attorney Finn may also want to add some, but I'd just like to say, as customary with any application, it's the applicant's burden to provide expert testimony and evidence to the record for the commission to consider. And we've engaged a hydrogeologist, we've engaged an LEP, we are providing additional testing and data for the commission to review and to consider, and our experts are here to offer that testimony on the record. And not only that, we also have an intervener who is very focused and concerned with the environment. As an intervener, he is acting as the natural resource themselves, and they've engaged several consultants who are providing their expert opinion on our analysis as well. I feel, frankly, for the commission to engage another or multiple consultants to provide the same information that we're providing and additional information, frankly, questions the integrity of the professionals hired by the applicant, and I think it kind of seems a little inappropriate. And certainly would establish a precedent that I've never seen this commission establish on any project in the 8 years I've been doing business in this community.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I want to go back to what was apparently the source of this motion, which is the report from the Southwest Conservation District. And if you read the report, and in particular the executive summary, you'll see that many of the recommendations that were made and which are apparently incorporated into this motion are speaking about after the project is approved and is going forward. So for example, with regard to having an independent party check the sediment traps, that recommendation was over the course of the 10 years that the project is going on after it starts. It doesn't make any sense to require that now. Another example is the hydrogeologist. The report recommends that the applicant hire a hydrogeologist, which we've done. Now, it's going to take a while to get his report. We're talking about October, it sounds like to me. That's a month or so away. I believe that we've already sort of gone through the 90 days or close to it, and we may only have about 60 days left or so, maybe a little bit more. So we have a time crunch. With regard to the wells and the leachate, again, they're talking about after the material has been placed, monitoring this project after it begins to make sure that none of the material that is new material to the site is going to cause problems. So doing this now seems really not what was envisioned by the Southwest Conservation District report as I read it. He was putting conditions in the approval that require these things, not doing those things now. I agree that he recommended strongly that we, meaning the applicant, hire a hydrogeologist, and that's what we're going to do. I also think Mr. Solly makes an excellent point about the vetting process. Here, the commission has the advantage of having, or from our standpoint, a disadvantage of having an intervener here who's been looking over things extremely carefully, very detailed. It seems to me that at that point, you've really got all the information you need. Now, maybe down the road, to the extent that there may be a disagreement between experts, at that point, if maybe you want to revisit a particular issue where there's disagreement or where you feel you can't referee the dispute, that would make sense to me, perhaps. But at this juncture, I think it's premature and it's not consistent with what my reading of the report by the Southwest Conservation District. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess, to address your point here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Who's this?
The intervener.
Yeah, Attorney Green, just give me a second. I have something I want to say in response. You know, in the next meeting, we're going to have Chris Sullivan in the meeting, and I think to address some things with Bill Kenny, if I remember correctly. But anyways, we have next meeting, and I think we can certainly have the dialogue if we need to further interpret what the recommendation was and see how this motion applies to that. So that could answer some questions, possibly settle out some redundancies if they're there. I think it sounds to me like one of the points being made here is that if you're, you know, the hydrogeologist that's hired should probably be vetted out by the commission, correct? If that sounds right to everybody. I don't know if you actually chose a person already, and he may actually be on the list. I mean, chances are he could be on the list that we get. How does that sound to?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Commissioner, Attorney Green.
You know, I hate to say it, but I'm happy to say it, I guess, in this moment. I've been at this for 35 plus years. And in all of those years, I've appeared on applications, and I have never seen a consultant for an applicant issue a report that was adverse to the applicant in those 35 years. I'm often, and let me go one step further. For example, in the town of Fairfield, every project had a traffic consultant who said that this project won't incrementally affect traffic service or the level of service, and yet so many times I sit in bumper to bumper traffic on the post road in Fairfield with all of these traffic consultants having offered this opinion, and yet here we sit. Now, to put this in some context, the applicant here is proposing to receive and be paid to accept 1.3 million yards of fill. So I'm not concerned, and I think the commission should keep this in context in terms of the economics and the magnitude of this site, of the project, of the site, and you all saw it during the site visit. And the point is this commission should get this call right. You should have independent minds looking at the material that this applicant and their consultants are submitting. And in fairness, and to the point that Mr. Soley and Mr. Finn made, and looking at the material that our consultants are going to submit. And I think that it would make perfect sense, and it would help this commission to make the right call on this massive, massive project. And I think that's, I think that the commission should get the ball rolling. And I think Mr. Attorney Finn said there may be some timing issues, and I think that's true. So if the commission has the opportunity, without committing to anything, to sort of get the ball rolling and to have its consultant, Southwest, make some recommendations as to appropriate consultants, then certainly that is a sensible and prudent course of action. And I think that it would be great help to the commission. It's done frequently. Your regulations contemplate it. I've seen it done in just countless applications throughout the area. And I really don't think that the applicant or Mr. Soley should take any offense at the fact that the commission is seeking independent counsel, because it is the right thing to do. It restores the confidence and really gives confidence to your community that you're doing the right thing and getting an independent set of eyes, and it can do nothing but help the assessment of this application. I think Evan Glass may have had a comment that he wanted to offer, and he is our consultant. I don't know whether I covered it, Evan. If I may, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Evan, just give me 1 second. I just want to ask a question, general question to everybody. If in fact we did not have, and actually ask a question for you, Attorney Green, first. You're somebody on your team review all the data, the manifest, whatever data that the applicant is going to be providing, correct?
We will be reviewing that material once we have it, of course.
Yes, once you have it. So
Yeah.
I guess the question that comes to my mind, and ask my commissioners, and, you know, I guess, I don't know how big this file is going to be and how many papers, but if we didn't have Attorney Green as an intervener, were we all going to divvy up and, you know, go through it? I mean, I think in that respect, just to look at, it should be a, you know, a pile of paperwork. I don't think that's in our, you know, our, how would I want to say this? Our description of public service to the town. You know, that sounds more like a job. It sounds like an actual, you know, job for a professional. So we're volunteers for the town, you know, publicly serving the town. I think that is one, you know, logical reason why somebody has to represent us in evaluating at least the paperwork part of it. Just talking about the paperwork part at this point. I think that makes sense to me. If anybody wants to comment on that, you know, monologue there.
I think, can I talk?
Who's that?
This is Ross.
Ross, yeah, go ahead.
I'm starting to think that might be, in my opinion, a better idea than asking the applicant to hire an independent. Actually, the applicant would have to pay for the independent, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so really what you're asking him to do is hire two, because he's paying one guy and now he's going to pay a second guy. So I guess my point is, what makes us think that if he's paying the independent's bill, what makes us think that, you know where I'm going here?
Yeah, Ross, but just let me just remind you that the list of potential consultants, and this could be on this list, is coming from Chris Sullivan. Okay, so the list is he's vetting for us. He's giving us a list, and then we're going to look at it and figure out, well, you know, if we get 4 or 5 response, I think the list is going to have 5 firms' names on it. Time frame is important because we want the applicant to be able to complete their application on time. You know, they're obviously their costs. We obviously want to, you know, be fair and economical. So there's some other factors that we would be considering. Now, like I said, I don't think that it's fair. Like you said, it's not fair. They shouldn't have to hire 2. It sounded like they had hired a hydrogeologist. And I guess there's always a possibility if they're on the list. If they're on the list, then, you know, they have integrity because, you know, they're being recommended by Southwest Conservation District all the time. So I don't think we'd be really too worried about fraud, if that's what you were getting at. But let me
Mr. Romano, can I just respond to Attorney Green briefly?
Sure.
So look, I mean, this is somewhat unique because you already have an independent expert. You hired the Southwest Conservation District to do a very extensive study, do a site walk. You also had Aquarian Water out there who has a very strong interest in protecting the potability of the water that flows into their reservoirs, et cetera. You've got a lot of independent experts here. And as I go back to, you already have an independent expert opined about what you need going forward. And, you know, Mr. Green, Attorney Green made a very interesting statement about traffic studies. Well, those are working prospectively. That's not really a very good analogy because here, working prospectively, you're going to have conditions that are going to monitor this property after the project begins. That's where the concern is. The concern is not the site as it exists now, because you already sort of know what you've got. You've had the Southwest Conservation District evaluate it. You're going to get a hydrogeologist report. Southwest Conservation District is going to get a copy of that hydrogeologist report. I think they may also have their own staff of hydrogeologists or geologists on staff there. This seems to be really over the top and unnecessary, and is just going to delay things unnecessarily. So I think this is a bit a real overreach given how much information you already have here. I think the one other point I want to make, Mr. Romano, Chairman Romano, is that you may have missed this, but at the beginning of our presentation, perhaps at about the time you were getting on, Kevin Soley indicated that we have had extensive testing done of the property as it is now, and that we're going to be submitting a report about the testing results of this property. If the test results come back negative, then the indication about what fill has been there and what's been there before seems to be academic to me, because the material has been shown and the site has been shown to be clear of environmental contaminants. So the manifests are interesting, but really the proof in the pudding is going to be what the test results are. And the applicant is going to submit those test results to both you and the intervener and to the Southwest Conservation District. I think we've got this well covered, and I just think this is unnecessary expense and going to be very, very time consuming.
Well, let me just, Attorney Finn, if I didn't memorize the report from Chris Sullivan, but this draft was drawn up partially because of recommendations he had in the report. Okay, of future analysis of the site, if I want to use a general phrase. Okay, so when he's here next week, we can certainly open up a dialogue with him about these 5 points and see where that, where he falls on that, and and maybe further ask him to what's the word? Comment on his recommendations. Now, there may be some things in here that are recommendations from Chris that aren't going to be covered necessarily here, like maybe future, like you said, future erosion control measures. Obviously, that's part of the the ongoing plan, and it's going to be covered by reports from the site engineering firm. So there might be some redundancy in there. We can also flesh that out with him at the next meeting. So some of these details may not be covered. I mean, may not be necessary at this time. But again, even the data that comes in from, that you get, the data that comes in from your professionals on the applicant side, it has to be digested not by us, because that's really not our profession. So, and the other thing I was going to say was, in regards to, lost it. They'll come back to me. So I think the part of it, I had a discussion with staff. This could be a two-stage thing in sense that if you get the first, we don't necessarily have to order all this stuff, but a consulting firm in this, in this industry will have, certain stages, I think. And again, if I'm not quite saying it right, Kevin, you could certainly clarify, but they'll first do, overlaying reviews of paperwork, and then from there they may adjust their what they recommend to further clear the site, if you want to use that term, or clear the process, or clear whatever, however you want to say it. So they may not necessarily go and say, well, we're going to come in here and just do a whole bunch of new testing. They may just go through the paperwork that's available now and then confirm that, yeah, this stuff is legit, and then we're good. We're all happy. They may say this could require a little more exploration. You understand where I'm coming from? And
I don't want to interrupt.
Go ahead. I was pretty much done.
Yeah, look, I understand that. I go back to, I think, the one who can interpret his report the best is Mr. Sullivan. And again, I just reviewed the executive summary, and I didn't see him recommending anything other than having the applicant hire a hydrogeologist. I didn't see any of this other information that he was requesting in connection with the commission's processing of this application. He was recommending things after the application is granted as conditions. And so, but I will amend that to say, Mr. Chairman Romano, that I do recall him saying at the last hearing that if there was a dispute about the deepest part of the area where there's water, if there was a dispute about whether that was a water course or not, that an independent expert could be hired for that. But those are the only things that I recall being discussed. And I certainly, as I said, I reviewed his report this afternoon, and I actually made a list of his executive summary. And none of these things were part of his saying, let's do this now. Look, he may get this information we're going to provide, the test of results and the hydrogeologist, and say, look, I think we need to look at this more closely. But he is your independent guy here. I mean, that's what this conservation district does, is it vets and it reviews and evaluates inland wetlands applications, and it's sort of under the auspices of the state of Connecticut. So I think that covers it. And I would certainly wait to at least let him talk about what he thinks is required. I understand that the members of the commission have experience with this, but are not necessarily experts in all these areas. But Southwest Conservation District is.
Thank you. I'll just mention again, this draft was authored by staff and presented to me as, as a talking point to get the ball rolling here. So I think, Lois, just give me a second. I think we could probably narrow this down with Chris Sullivan at the next meeting, and then maybe work on this draft. Meantime, if there are some things we feel we should adjust. But I don't think we're going to get much farther on this topic until the next meeting with Chris Sullivan in the room, and then he can kind of piece it together if we're missing some of his points, or not missing him but misunderstanding it. Does that make sense?
May I have a word, Commissioner? Chairman?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Mr. Glass.
Okay, thank you. I think first and foremost, whether or not Mr. Sullivan recommended it before or after the project starts, in my opinion, I think it's a very good idea for the commission to have their own independent hydrogeologist, LEP, what have you, to provide information for you on behalf of you. It's just human nature. If you work for the applicant, you're going to lean that way. If you work for an intervener, you're going to lean that way. You want someone who's leaning for you. And I'll just say LEP shouldn't lean very much at all, one way or another, because we're licensed and we have to, we have to play it straight and narrow. Be that as it may, human nature is human nature. And I actually work in that capacity for the town of Berlin. I work for the town, hired by the town, to oversee an applicant's project. The applicant pays money into the town. I get my checks from the town, and I do a very even-handed job, and the town trusts me. The applicant trusts me, but it's a good arrangement, and I think you should use it. Whether there's redundancy or not with myself or with the applicant's hydrogeologist doesn't really matter that much. This is a 10-year project. This is one that is, and we'll ask Kevin Soley to do some arithmetic, some math, tens of millions of dollars in tipping fees. I also want to address Mr. Fitz, who said that the intervener, me, has reviewed things in excruciating detail. I'll just point out that we still have not seen one laboratory report at all. We haven't seen any data. So Mr. Finn, I just don't think, well, to the commission, I just don't think Mr. Finn's statement was fair. It just seems to me that methinks the lady doth protest too much. It just seems like they're simply afraid of having the commission have their own independent consultants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Let me go to Lois, who wants to make a comment.
I think that a third-party review, actually rather eloquently said before, the third-party review is independent, regardless of who pays for it. It's just in the regs that the applicant pays for it, but the applicant does not hire the person. And as you said, Chris Sullivan may have a list of people that are appropriate. I think that's a good idea. And it also could work very well to the applicant's benefit, because that expert may completely agree with his experts, in which case everybody says this is the best way we can go. It almost always, if you have a faction that's on one side and a faction on the other side, and they're both dueling, you get somebody in the middle that's independent, they can solve the problem, and they can make everybody feel like they're doing the best job possible. So I think it's a good idea that we do this, regardless of how anybody wants to fight it one way or the other. The third party, since we are not experts ourselves, we are all volunteers, is a very good way to go. And Kevin, I just wanted to tell you, we have hired independent consultants, but it was before you were part of our group. Another thing is that this draft only enables our staff to start the process. There's no money being exchanged. There's nothing except investigation happening here. So there shouldn't be any problem. It's only when we decide to hire somebody that any money goes, or anything further happens. If we start the clock going, not the clock, but if we start the process, we move the process along. The longer we wait, the longer it takes. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that we may not need a third opinion on everything, but there are definitely some things that need to be qualified and quantified by somebody that has not got some kind of an outside interest. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Spence. Actually, let me just thank you.
Commissioner Romano.
Give me 1 second. I just reread this again, and it just made sense to me what Commissioner Spence said. This is actually just a motion to solicit quotations. This isn't a motion to implement or hire them. So it actually makes sense that we do vote on it if we want to keep this application moving forward. And in fact, we decide that we do need it. Now we have the quotations. Does that make sense? I'll let the applicant respond to that, and then we'll get back to council on this as well.
Yes, Commissioner Romano and Commission, I've sat here and I've watched everybody discuss this. I got two comments, one to Attorney Green, one to his consultant, and to any professional. I think anybody who is a licensed anyone who people view would change their report or slant it in such a way, these guys are all professionally licensed. I'm 100% sure that Attorney Finn isn't going to do something that's going to jeopardize his license. I'm 100% sure that Kevin Soley isn't. But, in this case, there is an intervener, and we have yet to hear if they agree or disagree with the general concept. Okay? I don't have a problem at this point if after we see what everybody says, we need additional help for you guys to come and make the right decision. But at this point, we haven't yet heard from anybody who says, geez, the concepts we're talking about don't work, or geez, we should do it a different way. The intervener only really gets to discuss the environmental issues. He doesn't really get to opine on on everything that he'd like to. So my point is, let's see where we disagree before we go hire a slew of consultants on my dime, okay, that may not be necessary, okay? But I do resent that anybody who we're going to hire, and I see Bill Kenny on, nobody is going to risk their license, okay, to write a report that is anything than accurate or proper. So, and again, I sit through these and we discuss technical terms, but let's be honest, do we think there's a disagreement that this property should be rectified and move forward? Because if the thought is we should leave it as it is, I'll go develop the front, and we should just let the back sit follow. I mean, we've come here, we've presented pages of information with more to come. I've yet to hear anybody say, geez, we disagree with the concept. So if there is a view that we can't, get over, yes, let's go to another independent source and see if we can get them to get everybody together. But, never have I sat through a wetlands commission where you've had somebody who's trying to make something that is out there better with as much difficulty as I've seen here.
Well, Mr. Cart, thank you for the comment. First of all, let's just, again, reiterate, the motion for tonight is to just get pricing, which is just going to save us some time and step if it's required. So this is not, hiring someone on your dime. This is not what this is. It's just getting the pricing. That's number one. Number two, about talking about your concepts. I'm not 100. I haven't done this long enough to know whether that could be a discussion at this time or not. And I'm gonna refer to council either tonight or at a later time. I don't have a problem with it if it almost sounds like you're talking about like what they do at P&Z with the subcommittee. Just have some open discussion about the concept. I don't think anybody has really said they don't like the idea from the commission. I think it's a matter of methodology at this point. And I agree that you should have should probably have some idea as to which way we're going to go. But again, I'm too new to it to have a real answer for you at this time. I think we should probably. I mean, it's my opinion that I think it doesn't hurt to get prices, right? It's free, they're free. And if we have to implement it, we have to implement it. Fair? Yeah, Kevin, do you want to? What I said earlier about the way the process could possibly work with one of these consulting firms, was that accurate enough, or do you want to comment on that?
No, you're sure. You're absolutely right. There are a lot of firms out there, and most likely the ones that are on Chris Sullivan's list are going to have different personnel who can provide the different services requested. So I would, and just to comment on something else, that comment, he doth protest too much. I've said from the beginning, I welcome the Southwest Conservation District's comments, and I welcome the interveners' comments, because we want to make sure this project is the best for the community, and we believe we're putting our best foot forward. So I have no problem if the town engages a third party. They're probably going to share our same opinion. I have that confidence in this application. I'm more concerned about the time and the cost to my client. But all that, nonetheless, yes, there are. I think if the commission were to, or if the town was to put this out as an RFP for different consulting firms would likely reply with the services that they can provide, and kind of pick and choose, right? So if there's a firm that can do the hydrogeology and the environmental, they would respond on that. If a firm can only do the civil related stuff, they can opine on that. I think you're going to get a number of different things. Again, I only caution the commission on, engaging another consultant to do the same exact analysis that the applicant is doing. Seems a little beyond what I've seen in the peer review stuff before. And Lois, I think I have seen the Wetlands Commission engage one soil scientist to opine on an application at 464 Monroe Turnpike. And if I remember correctly, the soil scientist engaged by the town actually said, we don't think those are wetlands. So So I agree, I think it would benefit us. I think it would be beneficial to us, and they likely would share the same opinions that we have and the same opinion that Southwest Conservation District came up with, that rehydrating the wetlands is the best thing for this property. And we stand by that. So, if the town and staff wants to solicit proposals, they can certainly do that. I would just, think, good.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll ask the commission to comment in a discussion in a form of we could do that, I think, right? Is that, Barbara, is that okay for us to do?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear everything you said, Keith. What do you want to do?
At this point, right now, could I panel the commissioners and ask them to make comments on their thoughts of this application at this time?
I think the best thing to do is for somebody to make a formal motion along the lines of the draft motion, or if there are changes that anyone wants to make, but there should be a formal motion on the floor that's then seconded, and there can be discussion by the commission, and then it's voted on.
So the draft motion, I believe,
excuse me?
Sorry about it. I believe that is something we should just go forward. It's only getting pricing, and it's only going to help move this thing along if it's required. So but my question, let's deal with that now, and I'll ask my second question to Barbara afterwards. They want to make a motion to accept the draft motion with the changes? No.
I would like to amend it before we do.
Just make that part of your motion. The amendment.
And Keith, you keep breaking up something fierce. We lose half of what you're saying.
Sorry.
I'm losing half of it. So I think I've got the gist that you want us to go through with the draft motion and see what everybody feels about it. Am I correct?
No, we could vote on that. Then what I meant to say, can you all hear me good?
At times.
Right now, I just want to try to get this thing off the table, motion, so that this can be implemented, getting the pricing.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying, Keith, let's right now there's a quote unquote draft motion. So I'm just saying from a procedural standpoint, the proper way to do it is have somebody make a formal motion that's then seconded. The commission can have discussion and vote. That's the best way to handle it.
What she said.
Can I amend the motion as if I were to read the draft motion? Can I add something to that draft motion?
Lois, you can make whatever motion you want.
All right, okay. Then I will do that, and I'll add my suggestion in at the same time. Does everybody have a copy of this, or am I one of the few?
I don't have a copy.
Okay, all right, so.
I've not seen it.
All right, it was sent out later this afternoon, I believe. Pursuant to Section 8-10 of the Monroe Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Regulations, and is recommended by the Southwest Conservation District report dated August 2020, the Monroe Inland Wetlands Commission, IWC, hereby authorizes the Inland Wetlands Agent to solicit preliminary estimates of costs and scheduling from independent appropriate consultants to perform the following work in association with IWC application 2020-03R. Number one is to analyze all data provided by the applicant pertaining to previously performed soil sample and groundwater conditions of the subject property. Number two is to perform separate soil samples in areas determined by the independent consultant and to analyze and report on said samples. Select and install, number three, to select and install new groundwater well locations as part of a monitoring network to analyze and report on any leachate leaving the subject property via groundwater flows. Number four is to inspect the sediment and erosion control devices on the subject property and report accordingly over the course of the project. Number five is to review the applicant's manifest, report on the data submitted, and mine was the additional clause would be to extract other opinions that the commission may need to make a more informed decision. I believe that was the extent. So we don't necessarily, that's changing a little bit.
Try to finish the motion. Just,
All right, that's my motion.
you have a second? Second? Second from Commissioner Hall? Any discussion on this?
Yeah, I just heard a lot of things in that motion that I don't think are appropriate at this point. They may be appropriate after approval, like monitoring wells. I mean, we're not going to have a consultant drill monitoring wells and take samples and do that. I don't believe. So
Commissioner Stewart, I think
I agree with. I don't see the point of hiring someone to look at center erosion controls at this point. That's something that's going to happen in the future. I do. On the other hand, I do agree that we should have the ability to hire some professionals, following what we hear from the applicants. Once we get, and I'm for having the ability of doing that, so we're ready to go, because I think that's going to speed up the process.
Commissioner Stewart, I believe that I know that this is just a solicitation of pricing, okay? And hopefully they're going to give us these bullet points in their pricing. We may not need everything that they propose. We might not need all the services that they put in their proposal. But at least if we have a proposal, we have something we can work with, at the next meeting. So they may, some of these things we may determine, no, that's not going to be necessary. Maybe, after we speak with Chris, he may say, this was already covered, or whatever the case may be, or you don't need to worry about this until 2 years down the road. Whatever the case may be, at least if we have a proposal, we have something to work with. So it's not hiring anybody. This isn't a motion to hire anybody. It's a motion to get proposals.
I completely understand.
Dovetailing on that, we may need to have more specific things that we're going to ask them to quote on. Maybe we do need to wait till after we hear from Chris.
My point is that, yes, it could need to be adjusted. It could be adjusted. We just don't want to let 2 weeks go by with no action and not have the applicant at least get something going on, in the proper direction, and have to wait again. These things are probably easily adjustable. It happens all the time. You get a quote back, we need an alteration to it. Come back, fine.
My only issue is we're going to be asking these consultants to put together very detailed proposals, and they're going to spend a lot of time putting these detailed proposals together. And I don't think it's fair to them if we're not going to use it. I'm all for contacting Southwest Conservation District and getting a list of available consultants and calling them saying, are you available on short notice to do some work for us, and having that list together for the next meeting. And I don't think you need a motion to do that, but let's proceed, because this is taking a little too long for this.
Yeah, well,
I do just want to point out that the regulations require that you proceed in this manner to get, under the regulations that's cited in the motion 810, it requires these cost estimates. So that's something that needs to be taken into consideration.
Well, if we're going to do this, then we're going to direct staff to get quotes. What are they quoting on?
These posts, it's the 5 points.
Okay.
5 points. They can obviously probably gonna ask for a copy of the third-party review. They're going to ask for copies of the application, of the site plans, and the report from Solely Engineering. They're open to have all of that information, put together their proposal.
Okay.
They probably could even call, I would assume they could even call the applicant maybe, I don't know, to if they have to clarify. I don't know how it works. It doesn't,
That's not usually a good idea. Usually the whole concept of an independent consultant is to keep them independent.
well, again, these firms that come from, they're gonna know how to proceed. I'm guessing. So they're gonna know how to proceed. It doesn't matter to us how they do it. They just have a protocol that they're gonna follow and it's gonna work.
Okay.
Right,
If I
so
can make a comment at this point, Keith.
No.
that's, who's it? Oh, Commissioner Hall? Yes.
Oh.
I think that this whole activity right now is a little premature. I know you'd like to see some activity, but the act of getting a quote requires proposals. It requires a lot of work from staff and then also from the people they reach out to. And since we haven't fully vetted or agreed on a list of work requirements, they'd be kind of shooting in the dark, I think, unless they have some standard boilerplate and an hourly rate to offer. But in order to truly understand what we're asking for, I think we need to hear more from the applicant and hear more from Chris Sullivan. Just my 2 cents on that.
It is, let's be reminded, it's the application has a clock, that's ticking.
Correct.
So we have to take that into consideration.
Understand.
And just from what, and a lot of these firms have people that are estimators. That's what their job is. Their job is to solicit work. Sometimes it takes them hours and hours and days to get a proposal together. I'm assuming this list is going to be pretty medium to large size firms that can handle this kind of work. And they kind of have that worked into their overhead, I'm assuming. So I don't think we have to worry too much if we have to ask them to adjust their proposal a couple times. It's my opinion. So we still have a motion. Are we done discussing it? Anybody else? Did we have a second on it?
Yes, BJ.
All right, all in favor of the motion on the table? This is a tough one, huh? All in favor? I'm going to go in favor. All right. Any opposed?
Opposed.
I oppose.
I'm not even sure I like the motion.
What's that? You're opposing your motion?
Well, it's not really my motion, but I did read it. Yeah, I don't feel like it's fleshed out enough.
All right, and that's no?
Yeah.
Five
Yeah.
no's.
5 no's.
Motion is denied.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Wouldn't this project be much less complicated if no fill was brought in and just the material on site was used to just level off that area and leave the rock walls and just build up the floor of that low spot high enough so that when it rains, stormwater would run to a particular place out of that area? And I mean, it seems like the biggest issue is all the fill that's going to get brought in. Would the project still be viable to do what your future vision is going to be without bringing in fill, or maybe a lot less fill?
How is it going to rehydrate the wetlands?
Well, once that area is filled, they were talking about bringing it up to grade and no longer bringing it higher, but bringing it more level with the top ridge of that ledge line, which means once the project is done, the only water going into the wetlands is stormwater. That's it. what I saw, what is it, 2.5 acres at the top of that hill that's still considered wetlands? It looks like a very healthy environment to me, the way it is right now without any water going to it.
It's not. That's just it. It's the way they've talked about all of the degradation of the vernal pools, and they used to be much different since they're.
It used to be a lot bigger.
Yeah, and wetter and more viable as wetlands. So that was the point of the whole thing, was to rehydrate those wetlands and get them to become what they, or at least closer to be what they used to be.
All right, so is this rehydrating going to be something that's going to be for the forever, or just for the period of time that they're pumping the water out of the pit?
I think, Ross, if I could help you with that.
Sure.
I think what's happening is that, so the grade was cut away and then the water drained away from the wetlands, basically down the slope. Once they bring this up to grade, it's permanent, and some of it gets revegetated. All wetlands all wetland depressions are fed by stormwater. When it rains, that's a storm.
Okay.
The water flows, through the soil and the surface, and some of it goes down, but it flows, and that's what hydrates wetland. It's all storm water technically, right? They're just going to bring the grade back up to allow, when it rains, the runoff to now refeed the wetlands, and that's permanent. Their proposal is permanent grading, I believe.
To rehydrate.
Yeah, and it's just they're basically putting back what was there, but they may not necessarily have to go say as steep as what was there, as long as there's a positive. And I'm not sure what the proposed grade is compared to the original grade. But as long as that water effectively runs off into the wetlands, that's the part of what the restoration is, and it's a permanent fix. If that helps you.
Okay.
Clark, go ahead.
Yeah, so what are we now doing? Are we finishing up for tonight? Because I think we've just probably much kicked this one. We've been kicking the dead horse for this, this one.
On the draft motion, yeah. Let me just ask council one quick question. Barbara, at this time, is it appropriate for the commissioners to give just a little bit of feedback to the applicant of if they like some things or not?
Yeah,
about the application?
They can give feedback.
Okay, so let's do that because the applicant requested that moments ago. I'll go down the line. This is the last portion of the hearing for tonight. Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you for making me first.
Well, you're the first one on my list.
Reverse alphabetical.
What?
I guess I understand the need to rehydrate the wetlands. And I understand that if it's done properly and there's liners in place, they can protect the groundwater. I'm just thinking in the future when they develop this site, there's going to be a bunch of asphalt, a bunch of buildings up above. So then we're going to be putting water from asphalt parking lots and storage areas down to the wetlands. So I'm not sure that in the long term, it's worth it. And I don't know that yet. And I think Ross has got an interesting point. Is it better to minimally fill it to get a developable area? Maybe create additional wetlands, other areas that can be created with less impact, with less filling, with less grading, and move on. But that's just my temporary thought, and I'm looking forward to seeing the professional reports and the revised drawings with the less fill. But thank you.
Okay. Is that it? Commissioner Hall.
Thank you.
Any feedback to the applicant so far?
Yes, I have. I feel like I've read a lot of information. The application, the Southwest Conservation District report, the interveners reports, and I feel it's all going in the right direction towards the goal of completing this with a set of guidelines to let this application move forward. I think there's still a lot of details, and that's where we seem to get hung up quite often, in the details. I think we need to keep the end in sight here on what it will take to put the milestones, steps, controls in place to either allow this to happen if those controls are in place, or deny it if there are no controls that can be put in place. But my feeling so far is that the work that's gone into it from everyone has brought up probably all the key points possible. Now it's just all got to be pulled together and turned into a plan that can be executed over 10 years. That's my comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Gingrich.
I'm actually going to agree with Commissioner Hall and Commissioner Mastrocco and Commissioner Stewart. Everything they've just said is everything that we're looking forward to having this project go forward. Now we just have to see it all together into one final version, because otherwise we just keep going around in circles right now, and this is getting really long. So I'm just looking forward to this night within the next 2 weeks. Hopefully we get this all rounded into one finalized application. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Spence?
I actually have a question for the applicant to ask the hydrogeologist. There were several mentions of Wetland 3 and Vernal Pool 3, which I believe is encompassed in Wetland 3. In the 2014 Wetlands report, it said that there was possible that it was on the perched water table, which I believe means that there was some kind of ledge underneath it. That was one thing that was mentioned by the 2014 report. Now, in Dr. Steinman's report, he mentioned that there were faults that he believed were created by the blasting that could be contributing to the draining of that. If that is a water table vernal pool, is rehydrating it by the methods we're discussing going to work if the rock underneath it is fractured? And if that's the case, is there anything else we can do to reestablish the viability of that pool? So I was hoping that the hydrogeologist could look at that, because it was looked at by two different factions, neither one of them that dealt with that particular situation. And other than that, I just want to remind the commissioners that this application is also for development of the other end of the property. It's not just the filling of the hole and the rehydrating the wetlands. We need to also work on the development, the actual building and whatever they're proposing on the other end of the property. So that's it.
Commissioner Rock?
I really don't have much more to say than I said a few minutes ago. I would like to see another proposal, with maybe no fill brought in, just enough to bring up that low spot. I think there'd be a lot more losing sleep over this whole project. And it seems like the fill is the biggest problem. So I guess let's see what we can do.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Mastrocco. I'll make my comment, and Kevin, I'll let you address the Lois's question about the fractured ledge below that wetlands area. My opinion is that this hole, either man's going to fill it in with earth, or earth is going to fill it in with water. And if you think of what was described to us way in the beginning, this was the over excavation of a foundation hole for a land development. I think that's where we have to bring this project back on track. I think, correct the mistake, do it right. Methodologies aside, because that's, I think, where sticking points at this point, but it was intended to be developed. It was once, I believe, approved to be developed as some kind of industrial entity. And these people have come forward with a plan to restore the wetlands, fill it into the grade that it probably damn near close to what, I don't know, Kevin, you can comment on this after, probably damn near close to what the proposed final grade was originally before. And, if they're gonna fix it, they're gonna fix it right, then we let them fix it. I think, if they're gonna go back to what originally was the proposal, we're talking 10, 15 years, whatever it was, that at one point was considered agreeable by the commission of, I guess, ours and the planning and zoning at the time. They're just fixing a mistake, and they're going to bring it back to, to above board where we were at that time, 15 years ago. But that's my thoughts on it. Kevin, if you want to wrap it up with a couple of responses, especially Commissioner Spence about that underlying fracture to ledge.
Of course. So thank you to all the commissioners for the feedback. That's exactly what we were looking for. And we wanted to understand the concerns and how we can best address everything. And I'm confident that, all of our revisions in response to all the discussions to date will put this into a nice package. And I'm excited to present that to everyone in a clear and concise and hopefully not too long of a presentation. Commissioner Spence, to your point, that's actually something that we talked about at length with a hydrogeologist from WSP regarding that wetland up top. So part of our analysis is actually going to include looking at that condition up there, the groundwater elevations that are up there right now, and kind of doing that exact evaluation. So that will be something that's going to be included in the report from WSP. So I think again, I just thank everybody for all of the time being invested in this project and this application. And I do think that it's going to be well worth it once we get to the end, because I think we're going to be able to have a proposal that restores, that meets the overarching goal as fixing and restoring the indirect wetland impact that happened to these wetlands and vernal pools over the years. And we can do it in a way that can be managed with proper protocols and policies in place so that the protections can be there, and it can also be done in a way that can still be done economically, viably for the applicant as well. So thanks everybody, and we look forward to the next discussion, which can hopefully be very pointed and addressing a lot of these specific issues.
I think we covered everything. I want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to especially thank all my commissioners who have really thought this through very, very well, it seems. You seem to all be very engaged in this. All the ideas, I think everything has been great. I think you guys are all doing a great job, thinking it through, coming up with different options. And we'll see you again, I guess, in a couple weeks. So this meeting, we motion to close the meeting.
Take a motion and we close the meeting.
Motion from Commissioner Gingrich, second.
Second.
That was Commissioner Stewart. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. This meeting is adjourned at 9:28 p.m.